time I didn't use a microphone. And then when we watched it back, I was just up there like this. But welcome. Thanks for joining us on this Memorial Day holiday. And my name is Julie, and I wanted to talk to you just briefly about Memorial Day traditions. Does anybody have a favorite Memorial Day tradition that you like to do? I'm going to tell you mine real fast, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to walk around and share yours. I like to go out to the Dallas Cemetery, and they have hundreds of flags all throughout there. If you get an opportunity, drive through there. But I like to go out there and run through with a friend. And this year I didn't think I was going to get to, but I talked someone into meeting me this morning. And we get all the way out there, and the gates are locked. So we got a picture. We thought about climbing the fence, but we figured there's probably cameras, and she had a dog, and we didn't want to chuck the dog over the fence. And so we just got a picture, and then we had to run around the hills by the cemetery, and it ended up being a lot of fun. But I'm going to try to get Jerry to run out there with me tomorrow and still get the tradition in, because it's just fun to go through and I like to take the flags, they get caught up in the bushes, and just pull them off to pay tribute to those who paid their lives for us. And so I wanted to just say a quick prayer, give you an opportunity to find someone you haven't met here, because I bet there's somebody here you haven't met yet. So try to find someone you haven't met, tell them your favorite Memorial Day holiday, and go back in the back and get some treats. Katie made some quiche this morning. So we actually have eggs this morning, so that's exciting. Dear Lord, thank you for this time together this morning. Be with Pastor Jerry as he shares with us, and be with all the families as they get together this weekend, and be with those who are missing someone today. May their hearts be filled with comfort this morning. We love you and praise you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
All I want is all you are. Will you meet me here? Sing, I'm not enough, Lord. I'm not enough unless you come. Make it your prayer.
Okay, so we were wondering, Julie and I were like, it's Memorial Weekend. I wonder how many people are going to be gone. So it's kind of cool to see we have a pretty good crowd. So thank you guys for making us part of Memorial Day. One of the tough things was most of our worship, actually I think almost all the people that are involved in worship are gone this week. So we were blessed that Noel came from our campus in McMinnville and is leading worship. So thank you for that, Noel. And so you could have had me up here playing the piano and singing. Laughing at me. You guys must have heard me play the piano and sing before. No, I know that my wife wouldn't have came if I would have sang. So anyways, so we have just a couple announcements. One is really exciting for me. Julie and I had a meeting, was it Friday night? Friday night to learn how to use our new Church Center app. It was a 3-hour meeting. And what we did learn, well, we learned that we have a lot to learn. But the cool thing is this app, if you download it, you can put in your information, tell us what you like to do, just like we filled out the paper. And then what we can do is we can schedule people to help. Like if you're like, oh, I want to make quiche for us, which is really cool, then you could put that on, well, not quiche, but just hospitality. And then Julie could schedule you to be the person that does that. And if you're going to be gone a few Sundays, you can actually put it. It's really cool. So it's just a fun way to connect with everybody. It has information. The only part of it right now that's a little kind of we have to get fixed is the calendar, because the calendar shows everything that's going on at McMinnville campus and us. So it's kind of, and they have a lot more going on right now because they've been established a long time. But hopefully we'll get that fixed. But everything else you can give, you can look at what your giving records are. It's really cool. It takes care of a lot of stuff. Plus we can connect with one another. So that'll be really cool. That if you want to do that, you can just scan the little QR code right there and do that. Also, next week, we're going to have a barbecue after service. So it's going to be really cool. The Propes are going to host us. And so we don't know their address, so you're going to have to talk to them about that. No, just kidding. We'll get their address, but after service, we're going to go there. They have a lot of, I think, lawn games and stuff like that we can play, which will be really cool. And then after the Spanish service is done, they're going to head there too, and we're going to have a barbecue together. It'll be a really cool opportunity for us to all get together as one church, even though we have 2 services. The Spanish church after us. So that'll be really cool. And then last, do we have our little barbecue thing? Because I think that's a cool slide that I spent hours making. No, I'm just kidding. It's okay. And then last, we're going to go ahead and receive our offering. And so how we receive our offering here is a little bit different than what I've done in other churches. We've passed the little gold plate. You know, there's always a gold plate, the gold plate you're passing around. But what we do is you can either scan that app right there, or you can just put it in the box in the back. And we do have the key to the box now. I know a few weeks ago we didn't know how to get the money out of the box, but we figured that out. So anyways, on your way out, just slide your money or check or checkbook or whatever, your credit cards in there, and we'll get those, and we'll take care of all that. So that'll be fun. Or scan the app. And just make sure that you go to the drop down where it says Monmouth Praise. Because someone yesterday was telling me, can you go to McMinnville and tell them they need to switch the money I wanted to give to you from them to you, because they accidentally gave it to the McMinnville church. And I'm like, well, I guess you bless them this time. Anyhow, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. And this morning I was reminded of something, of how different language can be when we work with different generations. So I know, like, a lot of you know I work with teenagers coaching, and a lot of times I'll make statements, and I think that they're cool statements, and they'll look at me like, what are you even trying to say? And I'm like, oh, you guys don't say that anymore. And they just think it's funny. Well, it reminded me of a particular one. So the other day, somebody, well, I've heard it a few times, but the other day somebody was, it's been a minute. And I was like, big deal. What's a minute? No, it's been a long time. And I'm like, a minute's a long time? No, a long time. A minute's a long time. And I was like, the only time I've ever thought of a minute being a long time is when I was in plank position. And then a minute becomes a long time. But it's just funny how different language is. And sometimes when we're speaking to another generation, when they say something, we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But a minute was one of the ones that got me. It's like, a minute? Anyways. But it reminded me of a situation. My daughter, when she was in 6th grade, she was at the first day of school, and they're giving her, her teacher, actually, her teacher was the daughter of Chris and Jeannie Edwardson. So she was Miss Edwardson back then, because it was before she was married, Shayla. So anyways, it was really funny. She was giving the students what the rules were. You can't do this, you can't bring this, no, none of this here, all these different things. And one of the things she said is, she said, you cannot use your Discmans in the class. And she had these blank stares, and she didn't think anything of it. How many people know what a Discman is? How many people had a Discman? Okay. So all the kids were just sitting there, and after she was all done, one of the kids in the back raised her hand really high, and she's like, yeah, what's going on? Miss Edwardson, what's a Discman? And Shayla goes, how many people know what a Discman is? No one raised their hand, not one person in the class. She goes, I'll take that off for next year. But it's so funny, she realized, my language doesn't quite connect with them the way that I thought it did. But anyways, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I just thought it was a cool story. So anyways. So today we're going to talk about, we're in Joshua, and we're at the end of Joshua now. We've been going through the Joshua from chapter 1 all the way through, and we actually missed chapter 1, 2, and 3, I think, because we didn't have a service yet. So we started, I think, in chapter 4, if I can remember properly. But anyways, we're in Joshua chapter 23 and 24, and this is the end. This is the end of the chapter. And we get to the point where Joshua 23 is Joshua explaining to them, hey, not explaining, going over the people of Israel. He says, hey, we need to talk. So let's talk about what God has done. So he goes over, and he goes all the way back, even pre-Abraham, Abraham's father. I don't even remember his name, but he goes pre-Abraham, and then all the promises he made and what's happened over the last 40, 50, well, actually go back farther than that, because you're going pre-Abraham, but hundreds of years, however many years it is, he goes back of the generations and all these things that God has done, how God has brought him to here, and how this has happened in Egypt, how he brought his people to Egypt through Joseph, and how all these different things, how he brought them through part of the Red Sea. He was just explaining all this and how important it is that remember, this is where we've come from. This is where we were. This is where we come from. He goes into all this different areas, says, hey, this is what we need to remember. And then he gets into things like, be careful to love God because of these different things. He goes through this. And then chapter 24, he gets pretty specific about things that they went through, about the actual things that they've went through this journey, and talks about how he's brought them to the promised land. They were on the other side. And all these things that God has done, he wants them to remember them. It's very important. God fed them. God, manna from heaven. It's like, okay, this is important. This is something we know. And all through this, he's reminding them of this, because even though God did all these things, the Israelites forgot all the time. So 1 second, God's bringing them through. He's parting the Red Sea in front of them and killing their enemy behind them. And then they're making gold calves and worshiping calves. And then he's doing something else for them. Then dealing with something else, or somebody stealing gold and hiding it under their tent right after God did a miracle here. But it's just always forgetting what God does. So Joshua's reminding them again. And then 1 through 12, he reminds specific things. Like I said, oh yeah, remember Jericho, remember the people east, all the Hizites, Perizzites, the Rezinites, the Mizanites. Okay, those aren't really people groups, but he starts reminding of all the people groups that were taken care of. And you get to verse 24, or chapter 24, verse 13, he says this. In 13, so that we know this is him telling the people what God had said. And he says, I gave you land you had not worked on. I gave you towns you did not build. The towns where you are now living, I gave you the vineyards and olive groves for food, though you did not plant them. So he was bringing about a reality to them that God had brought a lot of things. He'd brought land, he'd brought food, he'd brought this, the promised land and everything that comes with it. He had brought them this. And Joshua was wanting them to know that it's important that they remember. So I want point number one is we need to remember what God did. That's what Joshua 24, 1 through 13, it's all about this. Because you know what? He knew that the Israelites had a short memory. And this had been something that played out for years and years and years, that God would do something great. They would be, we love you, God, we're going to serve you forever. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we are making golden calves, or we are stealing, or we are killing our own people, or whatever we're doing, or worshiping other gods over and over again. And he was saying, you need to remember. Sometimes we have short memories and we forget what God has did. And he did not want, after everything had happened, last week we were in 10 and 11. Well, 10 and 11, 12 through 22 was all talking about after they defeated God had defeated all these, or brought them to defeat all these other lands, or conquer all these other lands. They have dividing this land out. So they were getting an inheritance from all the promises that were made. And Joshua didn't want them to forget what God had done. And it reminded me of a situation in Julie and I's life. We've just recently transitioned into this position, but 10 years ago, we transitioned from a associate youth pastor position into a missionary / chaplaincy position. And we transitioned into that. I think I talked about it a little bit, but that was one of the hardest years of our lives. We went from a paycheck every month to not a paycheck every month. Because when you're missionaries, you got to raise support. And what we didn't realize is we should have tried to raise the support before we transitioned. But the reality is we knew that we had been called and the situation happened the way it did. So we had to transition into a ministry position where there was no week to week or month to month or even paycheck coming. And it was a really hard time for us. I've even had family members say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. You got to take care of your family. This is the type of thing that you as a Christian man of the home, you should take care of your family. And this is something that you shouldn't do. Just that type of thing. So it was not only the financial burden that was on us, but it was also the burden to feel like that I had certain people telling me that I shouldn't do it. And this time in our life was hard, but it was probably the time where we grew more than any other time in our lives too. The hardest times are the growing times. But the reason why I bring that up is because sometimes during this situation, we would question, did we do the right thing? God, I don't understand. Why is this happening to us? Why is this so tough? And we had to remember that God has always been faithful. And I think that is the key a lot of times, because we deal with times in our lives where it's difficult. It's very difficult in our lives, and we have to remember what God brought us through. God stopped up the river so that we could cross it, or whatever he had done. And this was something that was crucial for us to be able to move forward, was to remember what God had done. And so I think that it's crucial for us that we're a people that remembers God's faithfulness, and remember what he has done for us. And then number 2 is choose. Joshua said to them, okay, so he tells them all this stuff. We go through this, and he's like, yeah, you're living on land that you not worked. And then he says this. And I think this is really profound, because what we have here is Joshua's most famous quote that he's ever said. Most people know this, and a lot of people have this on their walls at their home. And so he says this. He says, okay, so fear the Lord and serve him wholeheartedly. Put away forever the idols your ancestors worshiped when they lived beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt. Serve the Lord alone. But if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. Would you refer the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or will it be the God of the Amorites in whose land you now live? But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. I think this was such a crucial time in the Israelites' journey, because now he not only explained everything that was going on, but he said, okay, now what it's time for you to do is make a choice. You need to choose. It's no more going back and forth or saying, hey, this is a great time, so we're going to serve him. We're going back here. He says, now it's time for you to choose. And for me and my family, we're going to choose the Lord. And I think sometimes this statement, at least when I thought of it, I thought this is really cool to put on your wall. But the power and the commitment of this statement is way more than what we realize sometimes. It's not just something we say. And this is the thing. Their response to him in verse 16 is, the people replied, we would never abandon the Lord and serve other gods. I mean, they were so sure of themselves that they were going to serve that this was what they were going to do. They were now going to serve God in a way they haven't in the past. And I think that the insight of this comes in Joshua 24, verse 23. He says this, all right then. So they were like, yeah, we'll never abandon the Lord. He said, all right, it's good to hear that. All right then. Joshua said, destroy the idols among you and turn your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. The thing that I like so much about this is because a lot of times there's statements that are made by us, but they're just statements that are made, and our life doesn't match up with the statements we made. And that's what was happening here. I mean, we know that happened because we've seen it over and over again. And Joshua makes sure he calls them out. Okay, that's cool. That's what you want to do. So if you want to do that, you're going to destroy your idols among you. So they thought it was almost like, well, we're going to, just like before, we're going to make a commitment. And he says, okay, you're not just going to make a commitment this time. You're going to do something about it. So go destroy those idols among you and turn your hearts to the Lord. They thought their hearts, it makes you seem, if you read this, that they thought their hearts were already towards the Lord. And he was saying, no, you need to turn your hearts to the Lord. Josh says, choose whichever God you want to serve, but make a choice. Get off the fence. Get off a fence. And I know a lot of times when we think that, the fence might be, well, serving God or not serving God. No, I think it's serving God or letting idols be part of our lives. It's not so much, because it's easy for us to, as Christians, to say, yeah, I serve God. But then have idols in our lives. We don't see it as offense, but it is offense. Anytime that we let something else come in our way, that is sitting on a fence. Jesus said it on this during the Sermon on the Mount. He says, no one, in Matthew 6:24, he says, no one can serve two masters. We can't. A lot of times we want to, we think we can. We can claim God, but we can also live the way that we want sometimes, and then that's okay because we are claiming Christianity. And I think there's an illustration that I think is perfect for this. It's the story of the rich young ruler. And I don't know if anybody hears the story, but it's such a cool story. This guy, he's a rich guy. He's got, obviously, he's called a young ruler, so I don't know what that ruling looks like, but he rules something. He's a ruler over something. Maybe nowadays it'd be someone that owns maybe a lot of land or owns something, and he has people working for him, however it is. But this guy has a lot of money, and he decides to come up to God, or Jesus, come to Jesus, and he says, okay, what do I need to do to go to heaven? And he's like, well, it's you follow the 10 Commandments. You do what you're supposed to. He says, yeah, I've done all that from the very beginning. I've always done that. It was kind of like that smug thing. Yeah, I'm a Christian. I've done that. And Jesus does something that's so powerful, and I think that he does that in our lives a lot, but maybe we don't realize it because maybe we're not the rich young ruler. We have something else in our lives. But he said, okay, there's only one thing you lack. He's like, only one thing? That's not that bad. Go sell everything you own and give it away, and then you can come follow me. And guess what the guy does? He leaves sad because he's not willing to give it up. I have a youth pastor friend. We used to talk about this story, and he's like, yeah, but people use that out of context all the time. God never told us we have to give everyone up. It was that specific situation, and he's right. He's right. God's never told us, well, he's never told me. You need to, that's between you and God. But most of us, God doesn't say, go sell everything you know, but that's not the point. And I told him, that's not the point. When people give this story, they're not saying that people should go sell everything that they own. And thank the Lord that he doesn't want me to sell everything he owns, because if he did, I would have a choice to sell everything I own and follow him or not follow him. There's no other choice. But what he does is he gives this perfect illustration of how our lives are supposed to be. What is it in your life that means so much to you that you wouldn't be willing to give that up to follow God? We see it all the time in different situations that we deal with, as things that mean a lot to us. And are we willing to give that up to have a relationship with Jesus Christ? I think it's something that we have to ask. A relationship with Jesus Christ is one of two things. It's either of utmost importance or it's of no importance at all. There's no in between. That's the thing about the gospel that separates it from most belief systems, most religions, most of the thing, because it's of utmost importance if it's true. If Jesus really is who he says he is, he really did what he said he did, then the relationship with Jesus is of utmost importance. But if he wasn't, it's of no importance. So here's the thing, and this is the thing about Christianity that kind of blows us away. It is the simple idea of following a religion than any other one, because it's that simple. It's follow Jesus with all your heart, mind, soul. It says love, it's follow too. It says take up your cross and follow him. It's that simple. But it's very, very, very difficult if we're honest. I don't want to make something that's simple to be easy, because it's not. Following Jesus is not easy. But I've never known anything in life that was easy, that was worth its weight in gold, I guess. I don't even know if that's but it's worth anything. If it's easy, it's usually not worth anything. But the things that we work hard, the things that cost us a lot, those are the things that are worth. And here's the thing. It is very simple. The gospel is very simple, but it also costs us everything. So the cost is high. And the one thing that I think of in my life that best represents how I feel about this, and it's probably why I've grasped so hard to it, is running a marathon. Running a marathon is probably the most, distance running is probably the simplest sport. Everybody knows how to run. Everybody. There's not a person that you have to if you play football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, there is things you have to learn to be a good. There are things that have to be learned, techniques that have to be learned to be good at those. Running, you don't have to learn anything. Everybody knows how to run. We've all run before. So it's so simple, but it's so difficult. Anybody that's ever ran a marathon knows how difficult it is to run a marathon. It takes dedication. It takes time. It takes a lot of what we have. But the finish line, there's no way, unless you cross that finish line, that you can ever explain to someone what it feels like. And I believe in my life, and maybe in something else in your life that was something that you've experienced where this was so difficult, but you got to the end of that and you were like, this is great. It was all worth it. I believe, well, I've bet my entire life on it, that when I get to the finish line, it's going to be the greatest experience that I could ever imagine. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm up here today, because I believe that he is the way, the truth, and the life. And I think that it's imperative that we understand that serving God, serving Jesus Christ, is something that has to be done to its fullest. There's no in between. There's no fence. And then number 3 is legacy. And I think legacy, there's so many things that I was thinking about with this third point, but I thought legacy worked the best because it's Memorial Day. And I think of all the things that happened throughout this thing, and legacy kind of, it attaches 2 different things. I was looking at the different meanings because we think of different things when legacy, but it was long-lasting impact or of a particular event or actions that people had taken. So these long events, we think of that, but it's also inheritance. So legacy is really, really important in this story, but it's also important that we remember because we have a legacy because people have given their lives in wars all throughout our country, the making of our country, or the start of our country all the way through, receiving something valuable that someone or others sacrificed for. And that's what happened. Right after this, Joshua in 28 says, Joshua sent all the people away to their own homelands, and he had died soon after this. It says that 110 years ago, Joshua died. But he sent all the people away to their homelands. These are homelands that were theirs because of a legacy of others that had sacrificed and toiled over the years, all the way back to Abraham, all the way back. These are people that had lived in a way that made it so that these different people groups had land that was their homeland, that was a legacy that was brought on, and I thought it was really cool. And the thing is, I want to make this quick, but it's really cool, is Joshua's legacy, he was getting ready to die, but he had left a legacy. And then another person, which I thought was really cool, and I never noticed this before, and that's why I just think it's so cool, is Joseph. Joseph's the other person. So Joseph, we know, is the boy that was sold into slavery, the boy that had the coat of many colors, that his brothers were jealous of him, sold him into slavery. He had to deal with all this stuff in Egypt. And then he rose up to number 2 in Egypt, right under the king of Egypt, the ruler of Egypt. And he was the one that he saved the people of Israel in famine, brought them there, and that's how they get to Egypt. But what's really cool is Joseph says this to his brothers. Well, first of all, this is the important part. In verse 32 of Joshua 24, it says this: the bones of Joseph, which the Israelites had brought along with them when they were in Egypt, was buried in Shechem. So they had carried the bones of Joseph for many, many years, and they had the bones of Joseph with them, and they buried them in the promised land after it happened. And I thought that's really cool. And if you go back to Genesis, when Joseph, Genesis 24 and 26, Joseph says to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of the land out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from here. So Joseph died being 110. Who else died at 110? Jacob. That's kind of, or Jacob. Joshua. Joshua died at 110 too, like Joseph. That's really crazy. Then embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt, and they carried him around for years and years and years, and then they buried him there. And I thought, what a legacy that Joseph had. And he wanted to be brought into the land that he helped through his actions bring about that whole thing. So I just thought that that was really cool. So the legacy that is left by others, we need to make sure that we understand how important that is and appreciate and honor those people. I think of it, sometimes we hear standing on the shoulders of others, and that's basically what we do for those that have lost their life for our country, is we're standing on the shoulders of others, and we'll be able to meet here because of people that have went and died for our country. So if Noel wants to come back up here, I'm going to go ahead and pray, and we're going to worship. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much, Lord, for your love, your grace, your kindness. I thank you for all that you do, and I pray that you'd help us to remember the things that you do for us so that we can know that you're going to be there in the future, Lord, and that you're there for us now. God, I pray that you'd help us to see the idols in our lives so that we can get rid of those, so that we can jump off the fence and jump into a relationship with you like we never have before, and help us to remember those that have sacrificed their lives so that we can have what we have today, Lord. We love you and we praise you, and I pray as we worship, Lord, still our hearts towards you. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.